Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and you're listening to The Business of Content, a podcast about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. In this week's episode, we spoke to an Australian entrepreneur who launched one of the most popular sports science websites in the world. In 2014, Owen Walker faced a predicament. He was a sports scientist at a professional football club, and his manager asked him if they should buy expensive wearable technology that would help with the team's training. Walker turned to the internet to research whether this kind of technology was effective, but he found there wasn't much good sports science information online. That realization eventually led to the launch of Science for Sport, one of the leading information hubs that translates peer-reviewed sports science for a lay audience. The outlet has been embraced as a resource by pro and college teams, and Owen recently sold it to one of the world's largest sports technology companies. In our interview, Owen walked me through how he built the site's audience, his monetization strategies, and why he never focused on building his own personal brand. Before we jump into the interview, I need to ask something of you. I need you to subscribe to my Substack newsletter. It's the only way I monetize my content, and it's the only way that I can guarantee you that I'll keep producing this podcast. If you gain any value from the in-depth interviews I do here, then you should subscribe. It only costs $50 a year, and in exchange, you'll receive in-depth industry analysis and case studies right in your inbox. If I don't get enough subscribers, then I'll have to shut down this podcast and go back into content marketing consulting, and nobody really wants that. Go to simonowens.substack.com to subscribe. That's simonowens.substack.com, or just Google the words Simon Owens and newsletter. Okay, on to my interview with Owen. Hey, Owen, thanks for joining us.
No problem at all, mate. Pleasure to be on.
So you launched a media company several years ago focused on sports science. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you got interested in the subject matter in the first place? Like, did you major in it in college?
Yeah, pretty much. So, I mean, it kind of goes all the way back. Like, I used to play football as a kid, and that's always what I wanted to do. And then went through into university to study sports science effectively because I was a failed footballer. So I thought if you can't play it, then maybe work in it. And so I kind of wanted to work in the fitness, sports science aspect side of things. And so studied an undergrad degree at university and carried on, did a master's, and then thought I can start a business in this. It's pretty much how it kind of come about.
And for my listeners who don't know what sports science is, can you just give me kind of like a brief explanation?
Yeah, okay. So basically, we look at the performance of athletes and try and identify how we can improve it, from whether that's from a fitness standpoint or from a psychological, like a mental standpoint. It could be nutrition. And so all of those things, it's basically using evidence, science and evidence to try and improve those qualities of athletes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of sports, like pro sports teams, have sports scientists on staff who can help if they're having injuries or they're having some kind of challenge, like they can't achieve something, they can help them, perform at a higher level, right?
Yeah, definitely. Sports science has a particular niche, is very big in Europe. It's growing in the United States and stuff. And so like strength and conditioning has always been inherently big in the United States, but sports science is a discipline where it's using data analysis and a lot of those other things as well that come in from like a nutrition standpoint and things is really kind of taking off more and more. So in different parts of the world, but majority of teams, if you go to say any of the high level European football teams, like they've all got a multitude of different sports scientists working for that particular club.
And when did you graduate with that degree?
My undergrad degree in 2013, my master's degree in 2015.
And did you end up working for like a sports club or anything like that?
Yeah, so I worked for Premier League, like an English Premier League football club back home after I graduated. And so I worked there for a little while, and I also worked as an interim sports scientist for the Welsh Football Association. So that supports the national Welsh team.
And I think you maybe got the idea for what became the company you started because like you were you were trying to do research, right? And you weren't finding a lot of like mainstream articles that were based on peer reviewed research. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically just that. So there was two points in my life where I thought this is a big problem. When I was studying to earn my degree, I had to write essays and stuff, as most people know, for university. Trying to source that information, the only place you could really go was in textbooks. And so there wasn't much online. And the same applied when I got the job as well. And I was actually working in the field. It's like, right, okay, I want to know how long athletes need to spend in an ice bath in order to recover as fast as possible, and how cold should the water be as well. And just looking around online, there was nothing. The only websites really that might kind of touch on it were like bodybuilding.com, which, as you can imagine, is a very different demographic to sports science.
And like, did you realize that there's a potentially huge audience there? Because not only would there be people like you who actually are sports scientists, but there's just like obviously tens of millions of athletes out in the world who might need casual information about injuries or how to perform better, stuff like that.
Yeah, like it's actually a bit of a funny one because I was looking at it very much just from a coach standpoint. Like I was in that, like the coach's shoes, do you know what I mean? And so I pretty much just looked at it like that in that small niche. I never really looked at the bigger picture and thought everybody else is interested in sports science and wants this information. So we were focused specifically on coach education, post acquisition.
Which there are still a ton of coaches out there, even if you just narrow it down to that kind of niche.
Yeah, definitely. So it's still a pretty big market, but obviously if you can include the consumer market as well, then it probably tenfolds it.
Yeah. And so what did you launched something called Science for Sport. What did it look like initially?
Rubbish. It was. So one thing, I always had this like bigger vision in my mind that I wanted to open like a sports performance facility, like a gym, but also like you see in America, you see a lot of them like ING Academy and stuff like that. That was kind of like a longer vision I had. And I thought if I was going to launch one of those, take a step back, what would I do? Well, it's good to have a website with a lot of traffic, and then you've got a platform to launch the opening of this facility. And then I thought to myself, all right, take a step back again. Before I launch a website, why don't I just set up a Facebook page? And this was running back a number of years, right, when Facebook was actually pretty good for organic growth and stuff. So, and Instagram didn't really exist too much. It did, but not as it does today. And so it started off pretty much just as a Facebook page because it was free, quick to set up, and I wanted to kind of test the water. And then the followers grew and the interaction stuff was there. So I thought, all right, well, it's still free to launch a website. So I'll build a website on WordPress and launch it and put a bunch of information on it and see if people come to it.
And so that Facebook page, what were you publishing to it?
Just cool videos of like that I would find on the internet of, say, Barcelona football team doing like a preseason fitness test, or latest research articles on like the science of foam rolling, or any other random stuff that I could kind of think of. Do you know what I mean? It was performance related. See, I was more focused in on the strength and conditioning aspect of sports science rather than, say, the nutrition or the performance analysis or the medical aspect. So a lot of it was all to do with strength and conditioning.
But you were basically, at that time, you were aggregating content, right? Just sharing like videos that were already on Facebook or links to articles that were published elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's obviously very time consuming to produce the content yourself. Plus the fact I felt I had no authority, personally felt I had no authority to be putting content out into the world. So I was just aggregating it, putting it on there.
And so you eventually launch a WordPress site, like you said. Is that when you started gaining confidence that you could start like basically pulling in peer-reviewed research and start kind of like curating it and also summarizing it in like easy to read articles? Was that the idea?
Yeah, so I guess that kind of confidence just developed a little bit over time as well, So I started writing some of the core articles that I put on the website that were generating traffic. And obviously I started to then gauge the feedback from it and people really enjoying it and stuff like that. And I thought, okay, well, I've also got a master's. I also work in this area of the field. So I do have a degree of authority. And so I decided I was going to start summarizing the stuff, and launch it as a monthly magazine, like a purely digital magazine, because I couldn't be bothered dealing with logistics.
And so, and we'll get to the PDF in a second, but originally you were publishing like actual WordPress articles, right? And these were kind of search engine optimized, like the kinds of things that people would be Googling when they're trying to learn how to do something, right?
They were, articles that you put on the website, but they certainly weren't SEO optimized. Like if you roll back 4 years, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Like in terms of business, in terms of SEO, in terms of marketing, in terms of cash flow management, in terms of personal finance, anything like that. I literally had no idea. So I just knew I kind of wanted my own business and thought a website is the first step towards getting that end goal of performance facility and stuff. And so I just, wrote a load of random articles and put them on the website. There was no SEO strategy. There was none of that associated to it.
And then how did the site start finding an audience? Like when did you start learning all that kind of stuff to try to market and build an audience that was coming back?
Yeah, so I guess like partly because I did that preceding step, which was start a Facebook page, a number of people kind of already went to the website once it launched in the first place. So that would have garnered a bit of traffic. And then that traffic plus the fact, like even in today, there's a lack of content online. And so if you were searching for anything related to sports science, I'm sure we probably ranked quite easily because there wasn't a great degree of competition. Do you know what I mean? So I think you could call it luck as well, but it wouldn't have existed if I didn't put the work in the first place. So the Facebook page generating traffic, the fact there's probably a lack of competitive content online and stuff like that is what helped the website start to garner traffic.
And then it eventually it was like generating something like 80,000 page views a month, right?
Yeah, unique.
Or unique visitors a month. And you also eventually moved on to Instagram and saw a lot of success there. What kind of stuff were you publishing to Instagram?
Yeah, so Instagram's natively a bit more concise and imagery based. And so we started creating what we call infographics, which is basically taking information and putting it into a graphic. So yeah, we would share a lot of those. And obviously, if the best explanation really is if any of your listeners go there to look at it. So Science for Sport on Instagram, and you'll see like it's just consolidated information in an image, and we put those up, and those do really well. In conjunction with like videos as well of say random things, people, athletes training or teams training pre-season, all that sort of stuff.
What's like an example of something that you would condense into an infographic?
Whether creatine works as a supplement.
And it would have that as like the title of the infographic, and then it would have like what, bullet points or something like that?
Pretty much, yeah.
And that got a lot of likes, and people started eventually following. I think you have over close to 300,000 followers on Instagram now, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So eventually you decide you want to monetize it. You mentioned these kind of PDF guides. Can you talk about like what was the thing? Like how did you come to the decision that was going to be the way that you made money from the site?
Good question. So I launched the website without having any products, or like going back, I launched a Facebook page. I had no products. And then I launched the website, no products, no idea how I was going to monetize it. I just thought I can monetize this. I know I can at some point. And I'll just figure it out as I go along. Because like I said, I had no idea starting a business with no product. So how smart's that, right? Not very smart. And so I basically, because I built this audience, I just sat there kind of, not one day, but over a series of months or whatever, and thought, what the hell can I sell? And then kind of thought, right, okay, I can sell this monthly PDF magazine potentially, or not even the magazine. I can just sell monthly research summaries, because all of the peer-reviewed research is typically behind paywalls from the academic journals. And there's over 1,000 studies published every month in the domain of sports science. So I thought, right, okay, why don't we take the best ones, condense them, summarize them, and then just send them to our readers, our followers. And so I put together just a beta version and then sent it out to a number of people and with a survey and just said, would you pay for this? How much would you pay? And just surveyed them. Obviously, it's a bit of market research. I got like 300 responses. And they pretty much said, we'd pay for it. This is what we pay. And I just thought, all right, fine. There's a market research done. People pay for it. And I launched it.
How long were the guides?
About 20 pages in total, including the cover page, content page, and the summaries and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And so what did your workflow look like from month to month in terms of the free content you were putting on the website, on the social media, versus how you were putting together the PDF guides that were going out each month?
Yeah, so this is obviously in the early phases, right? Like it's changed since the inception to the exit and selling the company. From the initial phase, the launch phase, it was very much like I would spend about 10 hours a month going through all the academic journals and finding studies that I think people want to read, then consolidating them, summarizing them myself, putting it into the PDF. So I think it was about 20 or 30 hours per month to put the magazine together, the digital magazine. Then I would schedule stuff to go onto social media. So you could either just do that at the time. I think I was probably just using the Facebook scheduler rather than using things like Buffer. And yeah, like I didn't really consider too much about an email list. I actually had three MailChimp accounts because I didn't want to pay for MailChimp at the time because I didn't see the ROI because I had no idea about business. And so I had three MailChimp accounts, each which were allowed 2,000 free contacts. And so I'd send a newsletter out each month maybe or weekly to each of those 2,000, which was bonkers now I look back at it, but it's all part of the fun, right? The journey as you go along.
And what did you price the guides to begin with?
It was at £5, so that's British pound sterling. So it's about $7 initially.
And then per month, and then you eventually raised the price to something like $30, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So that's pretty expensive. How did you kind of start thinking about why it should be why you could charge a lot more, considering a lot of other publications out there like, newsletters and stuff like that, they charge a lot less. What made you what gave you the confidence that you could continue to raise the price like that?
Idiocracy. I don't know.
Obviously not, if it worked.
yeah. I mean, it worked. No, so some of our, say, competition, which weren't direct competition, the more indirect, was selling for ballpark that price anyway. I actually think it's $25 the magazine currently. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they're charging pretty much that anyway. And so we also wanted to be premium, so people would attach us to. Do you know what I mean? Because it becomes a perception thing. A great deal of what people perceive as value is purely made up in their mind, right? Like people spend a couple of $1,000s on a Louis Vuitton bag, but it doesn't mean that it's particularly better than $100 bag. It's just a perception thing, right? And the image it sells. And so part of it was to do with that. Another part was just the fact that in our indirect competition of charging ballpark that. Another part was that you could earn CPD points, so continuing education, through it, which you don't tend to do with just a regular magazine. And obviously the price point for acquiring your CPD points or CEU points or credits, whatever you want to call them, was higher than just $7 a month. Do you know what I mean? So again, like that was the ballpark range. So we thought, okay, well, if you're getting this many continuing education units, we can get the price up to this.
So how did you start converting your audience that was coming into, the blog posts and also who followed you on social media? How did you start pushing them towards becoming paying subscribers for the magazine?
Every way possible. So, we started the email list. We started to write. We eventually moved to Active Campaign to use automations and learn a bit more about copywriting and stuff and messaging. And so we started to bring them through the funnels on the email list, started to post monthly or even weekly, on like Instagram and stuff about snippets from the magazine. So we would say, this is what you can get. You can download a free copy of the magazine here. And then people would go opt in for that lead magnet and then go through the email funnel and start coming in that way. Started running Facebook ads and Instagram ads and all of that stuff.
And how much time went by between when you launched that initial Facebook page and when you started initially rolling out the PDF magazines?
Yeah, so this one's going to sound really long, but it's actually not as full on as it sounds. So I started the Facebook page in 2012, just whilst I was studying. So I think I was my second year at university. And so I might post once a week, twice a week or something. And I did nothing with it for 4 years pretty much until 2016, which is when I launched the website. I launched the website April 2016 and then launched the product in December 2016. So there was a long period between that 2012 and 2016, which obviously I was just doing it for free. I didn't have any idea how I was going to make a business out of it or whatever, but I also was maybe doing 30 minutes a week at tops during that 2012 to 2016. It was only really once I got into 2016 that I started thinking, okay, let's put out more content, let's genuinely start building an audience. and then launch a website.
And then after you launched the PDF, how long did it take before it was generating like real revenue? Like I think you said that it eventually got over to, something like 1,400 paying subscribers, which when you think like that's $250 a year, that's like some real revenue there.
Yeah, I mean, how you define real revenue, I'm not sure. Do you have a particular number to stick on it?
I mean, assuming it was mainly just you, obviously you start making a decent income once you're making like 100K a year. Enough to where it was creating like a replacing your previous salary.
Yeah, I mean, even in the first year, I was able to replace my salary by some amount. So the first year of running it, it was completely all me. I had virtually no out. I think my net profit margin was like 96% or something. And that's net, right? That wasn't even gross. This is how much like I was making markup on it. And I was doing about 60,000 US in revenue. So that was year one. And then so I ran it basically like a year and a half, 2 years on my own. And then I'd actually run it as a sole trader. I think you might call it like a sole proprietor or something like that in the US.
Yeah.
So again, like I said, I had no idea what I was doing. And then I incorporated it as a private limited company about a year and a half in. So January 2018. No, that would have been 2 years. January 2018. And pretty much from that point, then we crossed six figures and went up to about, 200,000 US a year in annual recurring revenue. So again, what you got to remember is it's a subscription model. So it was recurring revenue, not just one-time payments. So I mean, first year, like I said, probably to about 60,000 US, and then second year we started getting into six figures and so on.
And you weren't selling any kind of sponsorships within the magazine or anywhere else. This was like, we'll talk about the next form of monetization, but during this time, you weren't like doing any kind of advertising or anything like that, right?
No, there's none of that. Uh-huh. And I'm not sure if it's worth adding here as well, but we do have another product range as well. Do you know what I mean? So there is the Coach Academy, which is almost like Netflix for online mini courses. So we had
So that was my next question. So right, you eventually launched this product called Coach Academy. So how did that work?
Yeah. So again, that was partly a product I always kind of had in my mind as well. And it was like I would pretty much work, 15 hours a week. That's inherently all I've kind of done on this business over the last kind of 4 years, but it's almost been a year now since I've sold it, right? So I'm still involved, but so I ran it for 4 years, and pretty much for that whole time, I'd say I'd work anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week, maybe 30 hours a week sometimes on the business, and the rest, obviously, I'll just do what I want in my own time. And so it wasn't until COVID-19 and March 2020, pretty much, when everyone went into lockdown, that I thought, this is a good opportunity for me to work more hours and release a new product range. So obviously I always had this idea of having on-demand courses that you could earn certificates for completion on. And I wanted to make them just not courses that would take you 6-8 hours to do. I wanted to make it, because everyone's time poor, right? Not just coaches, everybody. So I thought, right, okay, why don't we just make them like an hour long and break them into maximum 15-minute videos so they're very digestible. And we put together that as a product and sold a subscription to that at 30 US a month.
And that was kind of still passive revenue, because it's not like you had to teach them in real time. It just, once somebody bought the course, then they would watch the videos during their own time.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's kind of going back to your original idea of launching the facility, except it's in a more scalable fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is something I've gone to realize. It was probably a year or 2 years into running the website, I thought, what was the point in opening a physical facility? Like, for me personally, it just doesn't fit my goals and my lifestyle and things like that. So pretty much everything I've done, I've tried to keep digital and scalable. So I don't want to do anything that's service based, because again, like time, I wouldn't do the work anymore, right? Like, I'm smarter than that now. But even still, if you have a service based business and scale, it's difficult to execute, because you need more people for the size that you get to. So again, I wanted a goods-based business, but a digital goods-based business.
So who ultimately are these customers who are buying these PDFs or subscribing to the PDFs or buying these Coach Academy courses? Like, are they coaches? Are they athletes? Or is it like an individual training for a marathon? Like, what's what's your understanding of who your audience and your customer base is?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of customer profiling. We've gone really in depth on it. There's three main customers, but ultimately they're kind of the same person. It's just different versions of them. And it's a coach. So a coach who works for a elite sports team or even lower. Sometimes you get amateur sports teams or semi-professional, and a number of organizations as well. So it might be, say, I'm not very good with American sports teams, say New York Knicks or Red Bull or whatever. And so they might particularly sign up and then give access to all their coaches and stuff.
Uh-huh. And so how much did you charge for the Coach Academy courses?
$30 a month.
30 a month. So almost not that much more than... And so you ran it like a subscription. They weren't buying like individual courses.
Yeah, subscription, exactly. So there's a company that's come out of Australia called A Cloud Guru. And if any of your listeners haven't heard of them, I definitely suggest you go away and look at it. I think they started 3 years ago and just exited for, I think it's 2 billion Australian, maybe US, I can't remember. And basically that's on-demand courses for learning how to code and develop cloud software. So Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud or Apple Cloud. And all that is as well as a monthly subscription-based model. Because at this point in time, there's a lack of information on the internet, which sounds crazy because most people think there's too much there, but there's actually a lack of information in certain niches and stuff like that. So at this point in time, you can charge good money for providing that information. I don't think that'll always be the case. I think information is going to quickly become free in the next 5 to 10 years. But for now, you can do that. And so this is just the next step in that transition from charging for content, like rather than paying per course, you're now paying subscription for access to a load of courses.
And who was appearing in the videos? Was that you?
No. So again, this is where I knew if I wanted to build a genuine, a business and not just a job, then you've got to take yourself out of the company. You can't be doing day-to-day operations. You can't have your face attached to closely attached to the brand if you want to sell your company and exit as well. Your company has to operate without you inside, as in actually working on the operational aspect of the business or providing all of the content and education. You just can't sell a company like that. You can, of course you can, but it becomes very difficult. And so when I started to realize that, I knew that I had to remove myself and just pay the true experts who were coaching in or knew that particular aspect, that field of study very well, and pay them to do the course. And so, I wasn't doing that.
So you were thinking about an exit very early on. You didn't want to just have this lifestyle business that you were running for decades.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, when you say thinking about it early on, I think before I launched the business, I thought it'd be cool to sell one, but I had no idea how I was going to do it or whatever. But I remember throughout the years just looking online on how you can sell an online business. Not that I was definitely going to do it, but I was just curious to know how you could do it and whether there was even any websites or platforms or markets to sell an online business, which in recent times I've come to learn that, there's a number of them and more of them have been popping up. But maybe 3 years in. So I ran from inception to exit was 4 years. So I think maybe 3 years in, 2.5 years in, I started thinking about an exit.
Uh-huh. And so you did eventually sell your company. When did you sell it?
November 2020.
Uh-huh. So relatively recently. And what did you sell it to?
I sold it to what's basically known as the largest sports tech company in the world. They're called Catapult Sport.
And what do they sell?
Yeah, so I was just about to say, if you see athletes wearing the bras underneath their shirts, so say a player takes their shirt off, you might see them wearing this bra underneath. Well, on the bra, that's basically like a GPS module. It contains other micro sensors as well, but GPS is probably the easiest to explain. And so you can see players, their total distance they've traveled in a game or how fast they've run. That technology is a lot of the time from Catapult Sports. They're the world leaders in that. They also do video analysis software and a load of different other product verticals, but that's kind of what they're best known for, I suppose.
And so what was the synergy? Was it them thinking they could sell their products to your audience, like you would almost be like a form of content marketing? Or was it, this is a new interesting business we want to get into, selling these PDFs, selling these courses and stuff like that?
No, so I guess pretty much a strategic acquisition in the fact that they are one of, if not the leading sports tech provider. And so they also want to become the education source, do you know what I mean, for sports science as well, and kind of become the leader in sports science education in that division. So yeah, the acquisition is primarily all about that, and like I said, again, it's marketing. Like, content is marketing. And so by providing content and information and education and entertainment and that aspect of things, you are doing direct marketing. So yeah.
And so they do want to build out additional revenue streams.
Yeah, definitely. They've got multiple verticals they're working on, and so that just forms part of one of the verticals.
And you mentioned before the Netflix of like sports science. They would actually have the resources to put out that level of content, right? Like, have you talked about, so you sold it in November 2020. What have you seen in the past like 7 to 8 months in terms of what, your two companies working together, their company having a lot more resources and stuff like that? Have you been able to up the production or anything like that?
Yeah, so I mean, part of the reason I was selling it is because I wanted to kind of liquidate equity, and I didn't necessarily have the risk tolerance to scale it personally. And so I knew kind of what it could become, and I knew with the exit and with their resources and like their risk appetite, that they would put more resources into it and scale it. And so I basically only ever had one full-time employee in the company who worked remotely, and they've basically now gone to, I think there's 6 full-time members of staff in the team already. And so we're just working on content production pipelines, kind of focusing on producing slightly different content in the avenue they want to take it down. And a rebranding as well. So they want to rebrand it slightly to bring it into in line with their other products. And so those are the primary changes we've seen recently in content production. Like I said, it's about to really get stepped up.
So they've tripled the headcount. And have you started to see like a lot more growth as a result of having that much more content? Or is the content that you said it's ramping up? So have you not really seen the fruits of that yet?
Yeah, we haven't seen the fruits of it yet. And one thing as well is, like, I wanted to learn how big companies worked. When I say big company, it's not Google, right? But it's still in a phase of blitzscaling as a company, and in the early phases, and things move slower, like in terms of making changes and doing things, right? But that's just the way it is in bigger companies. So it's been interesting to see that. It's actually on one of your podcasts. I wish I could remember which episode it was. Someone was talking about selling to big companies and how you realize where they're weak. Do you know what I mean? In terms of slow and getting things done. And I've very much experienced the same thing. I can see a lot of the strengths they've got, don't get me wrong, and how they can go about it. But you also see the weaknesses, which was part of the reason I wanted to sell to this company and not to any of the other buyers who are bidding in to buy the company.
And in what capacity are you working for the company now?
So on a consultant advisory basis. So yeah, they pay me. They wanted to keep me in as what's called like a key man lock-in, 2-year contract. And then I basically said a minimum 6 months in case I'm not enjoying it. And yeah, they pay me X amount to just advise them on the company, and help guide stuff and basically just kind of do what I want, the projects that I care about, but offer my advice and my expertise in that company, that particular business, and the industry.
And has that freed up a lot of your time?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, maybe it's not freed up my time, because before I was completely in charge to say, I'd do whatever. Like, don't get me wrong, as part of my deal, I work wherever I want, whenever I want, and that's part of the flexibility of it. But I'm still under obligation to. I have to do 15 hours. Well, yeah, so I'm contracted to do 15 hours per week for them. Whereas before, if I didn't want to do 15 hours, I wouldn't do it. Do you know what I mean? So if anything, I'm actually restricted a little bit, but at the same time, I'm free to walk away whenever I want as well. So I've got no complaints about it. It's just part of the deal.
So you're only working for them 15 hours a week. What do you're starting to think about what you want to do next? What is the next business you want to launch?
Um, that's the $1 million question. Huh? Like I've sat down over the last, because I mean, I haven't really done anything since I sold the company last November. Just pretty much been chilling since and thinking about what I kind of maybe want to do next and things like that. But we've been in that lockdown as well. So it's been a little bit annoying because I like to travel and stuff, but haven't been able to do it. But that's me just complaining about first world privileges, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what I want to do next, I've basically lined out a load of different business ideas that I feel I'd be kind of interested or passionate about doing and I think will work. And then just going to select one of them. But I've been approached recently by a couple of co-founders at an early stage startup and another kind of social impact profit for purpose business. And so I'm literally in the middle of looking at that right now and making a decision on that one. So I might jump in on that one. If not, I'm open to looking at other projects and stuff like that. So again, if there's any of your listeners that are interested in particular projects and getting anything off the ground, or they've got something off the ground and they're looking for a co-founder, then feel free to reach out. Completely open.
Do you think the next thing will involve like content and media, just a different niche?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love Red Bull's model, and basically what Red Bull have done. I don't know his name. I forget his name. It's a bit annoying, but the guy who founded Red Bull in the first place, he created a really good product, which is an energy drink. And that energy drink hasn't really changed. If you think about it, probably hasn't changed only a slight bit, in probably the last 30 years. And all he's done then is he outsourced the full production and fulfillment of that product. And then he started a separate company called Red Bull Media House. And my details might be off slightly, but he started this other company, Red Bull Media House. And all he does then is market the hell out of it. Do you know what I mean? And tries to create a brand around Red Bull. And Red Bull's become what it has today. So I love Red Bull from that aspect. And I love what he did there. And so I'm thinking the same thing. I want to find a cool product that someone else can manage. I'm not too interested in managing the product, and I just want to do the marketing.
And by marketing, you don't mean like email marketing and optimizing e-commerce websites. You mean creating like really cool content that's associated with that product and brand.
No, I do. I mean everything. So email list, the Facebook ads, the Instagram ads, and things like that. Again, like I won't do the operational aspect of it. I will do the strategic, and then I'll hire someone to manage the Facebook ads and things like that, right? So I'll do the very, like the higher end stuff, strategic stuff, and think, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, and then put people in place to do that.
Mm-hmm. You talked about how you didn't want to put your own personal brand at the front of the company because then it would be harder to sell. But do you given the rise of the creator economy and how, now we have these, basically celebrities who are YouTubers, Instagram influencers, stuff like that. Do you ever wish that you had more of a personal brand?
No.
You like being behind the scenes.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong, I know the value in it, right? Like Russell Brunson talks about it all the time in terms of the attractive character. And you look at Tesla, SpaceX, and you've got Elon Musk, and you look at Microsoft, Bill Gates, and all of that. Like those are the attractive characters to those companies. And some companies have a stronger attractive character than others. But there is always a buy-in. And so you're looking at bigger companies, attractive character. You're talking about like create in more just individual stuff. So YouTubers, at the end of the day, like say Mr. Beast, who's a big YouTuber. I'm not sure if you're aware of him or any of your listeners are aware of him. Like
yes,
the guy absolutely kills it on YouTube, and think how much money he's making doing it, right? But not everybody makes that amount of money. But at the same time, he's going to have trouble selling that company if he wants to sell it, which probably doesn't. But if he did want to sell it, he's going to have trouble doing so. And when I say he's going to have trouble doing so, he's probably not. But you get what I'm saying, right? It's going to be harder to sell a company like that. And which basically means if you're not making as much money as Mr. Beast and you're just doing your own YouTube stuff, like you don't have a company. Like you don't have a company, you don't have a business. You've got a job, you're self-employed, and you've got to be very real to yourself about that. Most people think, oh, I'm going to start a company, I'm going to go on my own and do this. That isn't a company. Like you've just got a job and you're self-employed. I didn't want a job and I didn't want to be self-employed in that aspect, right? I want a company that operates and grows without me, if I want to go away to the Philippines for 6 weeks and not do a single hour of work, I want my company growing. Do you know what I mean? And you just don't have that with doing your own personal brand stuff. So for me personally, it doesn't fit, and I don't care. There's no ego associated for it. For me, like, I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be at the forefront. I don't want people saying this and doing that. I just want to work quietly in the background and do what I want to do when I want to do it.
Okay, Owen. Well, those were all the questions I had for you. Where can people find you online?
LinkedIn, probably the best way. Just, I guess, search Owen Walker Science for Sport. And yeah, if you want to connect to me on LinkedIn, they can do so there. Again, like I said, I stay away from being on social, so stay quite quiet in the background. You won't find me really on Twitter or anything like that. So LinkedIn's the best spot.
Okay, well, it's a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me.
Perfect. Cheers, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks for joining us. I'm actually on the lookout for new guests for this podcast. So if you do interesting stuff in digital content, whether you're a full-time YouTuber, a media executive, or run a cool niche newsletter, definitely reach out. My email address is simonowens@gmail.com. Okay, see you next week.